Hi, Peter. Thank you for being on our Zoom interview series today. This is the Dressed to Impress legal video series, and what better time to get dressed up than in the middle of a lockdown.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Peter, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Paula, thank you. So I'm a business broker and registered business valuer, and I specialise in the legal industry, which means doing this type of work for law firms and also helping law firms and legal practices with their succession arrangements and partnership issues. And also I'm a CPA with a client base of mainly law firms. But I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Business Brokers, and I spend a lot of time with other business brokers in a lot of other industries. And yes, here we are in lockdown and dressed to impress, hopefully, in Sydney, that is.
Yes. So your speciality is in law firms, and even just from talking to many of my colleagues, you are quite well known as a specialist in that area. And in fact, your speciality is quite wide ranging, because people ask you to come in and consult on all sorts of matters, including productivity and just understanding the whole mechanism in a law firm about billable hours. Do you find that you have been called in to look inside a law firm's operations and assess, or is that something that you do, from time to time to help people within the law firm look at their productivity?
Well, whether I'm asked or not, as part of every single assignment that I take on, I look at the productivity of every law firm. So if you want to understand what's going on in a law firm, the value, its history, a great starting point is to look at the productivity of the people who work in it.
Okay. And do you find that most law firms aren't operating at full productivity, or do a lot of law firms have that area, well understood? Because it is quite fundamental at a partnership level to understand how a law firm operates and how the numbers play out.
Well, what I find interesting is that obviously a lot depends on the partners, the principal of the law firm and their working style. And it might sound a bit harsh in a way to say, well, how do we increase productivity? It sounds a lot like, how do we make people work harder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's really not like that at all, because people appreciate being efficient. No one likes to take twice as long to do a task than to do it once and to do it quickly and get it right the first time. No one likes to waste their time. So productivity is not about, getting the whip out and flogging people and making their lives a misery. It's actually the complete opposite. It's making people feel like they're adding the most value possible in their work. So productivity is a very positive thing. And law firms are often asking me how they can become more productive. But even more so, they're asking, are they productive? Because usually they only know their own firm, whereas I've looked at hundreds, literally thousands, actually, more than 1,000 law firms.
Mm-hmm.
And I can pretty quickly give them guidance as to productivity. Now, without going on too much about that part of it, productivity is a very personal thing. If someone chooses not to be the most productive law firm in the world, or to be satisfied with where they are, then I'm okay with that. I'm not going to tell them that they're deficient in any way. It's all about choice.
Okay. One thing that characterises law firms is the billable hour, billable hours. And what is your view on that system? Because I know that a lot of businesses are starting to look at ways that they can invoice that's not referable to hours. And the other question that I wanted to ask is, I don't think a lot of us, well, perhaps, there's a lot of inefficiencies. When we take on a client and we agree an hourly rate, a lot of people look at lawyers and think, oh, that's a very high hourly rate. But when you look at the amount of write-offs or write-downs or time that just isn't even recorded in the client brief, it's often a rate that's not accurate for a start. So what's your view on the whole hourly rate thing and just the dynamic?
Well, so Paula, obviously that's a huge topic, and we could just spend a whole seminar or day or a long time just talking about that. It's a huge topic, and you hear lots of different views, but at different times, different views come into fashion and then go out of fashion. I think the bottom line is that the billable hour, or the business model of law firms, in fact, the business model of professional services firms, is selling the time of their people. That's what you as a lawyer are selling. That's what I am actually selling, our time. And we can package up our time and price it and sell it in different ways. So I don't think that there's anything intrinsically, say, evil about the billable hour. If there's probably one worse thing about it, it's the poor people who have to record their time. It can be a laborious task, but technology has come to the fore now and introduced ways of making it a lot less painful to record your time. Mm-hmm. For example, there's software that actually tracks and monitors what you're doing and which client you're working on, so that you don't have to do any time entries whatsoever. Perhaps at the end of a day or whenever you review it, it will produce a list of all the work you've done, and then you can just modify that accordingly. So to your question about is it better to have a more realistic rate than have an over-the-top rate which you have to chop and cut and make excuses for later on? Well, yes, I agree with you. That is a better way. It is better to have a more realistic rate than an artificial rate that you never actually charge anyone, because a high rate is going to cause resistance amongst your clients. And then at the end of the day, it becomes a negotiation. So why not just charge a realistic, fair rate, whether it's billable by time or by flat fee? It is far better.
Okay, got it. There are a lot of lawyers that are now getting to that stage where they're ready to retire, particularly smaller practitioners or smaller businesses or sole practitioners. So they get to an age where they want to finish working, although a lot of lawyers do tend to work till quite late in their life. Do you find that?
Well, yes, I'm a business broker and I specialise in professional services, and I specialise even more in legal practices. And there's quite a lot of legal practices in Australia, thousands upon thousands. And yet, if you look at how many legal practices are actually offered for sale, it's very few in proportion to the number of legal practices that actually exist. Right. And so selling your legal practice is actually not the default position of the majority of lawyers so far that I've come across. Now, this might change as the baby boomers get on and start to have other options in their life. But for a long time, up until now, the default position has been something that I describe as the wind down. So instead of reaching an end where you sell your practice, you slowly and gradually take less work, or maybe less work comes to you and you're satisfied with that position, and you just sort of gradually phase yourself out. So that's what I call the wind down.
Okay. So what you're saying is that just by implication, a lot of lawyers don't end up selling their law practices.
That's right. Now, personally, my preference is that every single lawyer would sell their legal practice, because that would be wonderful for me as a business broker of legal practices.
Right.
And it would be wonderful for people who are looking to buy practices as well, because there never seems to be enough practices on the market to satisfy the demand, interestingly. So
there is a demand for these practices.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's absolutely a demand, and there's tremendous value in these practices. The default is to wind it down, but it doesn't have to be that way. And you can get the best of both worlds by having a plan where you sell your equity and continue working in the practice. And I find that the practices that are thriving and really good quality practices are the ones where this wind down is less able to be implemented, because you can't wind down a practice that's got tons of work coming in, it's got staff, it's got lots of activity, and it's a good operation. So you just can't choose to wind something like that down. So a lot of the practices that I get to sell are those practices that are for some reason or another still thriving, regardless of the age and intentions, objectives of the partners and the principals. It's still going strong. And so when they're still going strong and the owner realizes it's time for a change, or he or she wants to have a change, then I'll come in and help them accomplish that.
Okay. And just out of interest, who are the people looking to acquire these practices? Are they growing law firms that are looking to quickly grow and get a bigger client base, or who are they?
Well, I think that you can broadly categorize them as existing law firms or individuals. So they're basically the two classic types of buyers. So a law firm, that's pretty obvious who that is, an existing law firm. Maybe they want to expand in a new geographic area. Or individuals, maybe they've been an employed lawyer, maybe they've come to the end of their career ladder in the firm that they're working in. They want to go out on their own. In fact, some lawyers go out on their own and then they want to sort of have a boost to their practice, and they decide that they look into buying a firm. So the other typical type of thinking that goes on is, should I buy a firm or should I start a new firm? Again, timing is very important. It depends on what firms are available at the time. And if there is not a firm available at the time in the price range desired, then yes, you'll be starting your own firm and building that, and then maybe an opportunity will arise down the track.
In your sphere of operation, though, do you find that smaller practitioners ever decide to work together, or is that something that you're also involved in?
Yes, it is. I'm often asked about whether a particular combination is a good idea, or what type of firm would be suited for a particular firm. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And do you ever recommend that the firms shouldn't merge? And what would be the reason?
Well, it's interesting because I tend to spend more time discouraging mergers than encouraging them. And the reason is that people have maybe overly optimistic or hopeful idea about what a particular merger will do for them. A merger is definitely not going to solve all of your problems.
Right. I think you were telling me a little while ago that somebody was interested in selling a law firm, and that, and this is the reason I'm asking this question is, do you think that when some practitioners decide to sell their law firm, they have an inflated view about what it is that their law firm is worth, and does that sometimes mean that they won't sell their law practice, or they won't be able to recognize some value for the law practice?
So generally, the thrust of your comments, I think what you're sort of hinting at is basically the low value of law firms. And I think that it is not letting out any secrets that law firms have relatively low valuations, especially compared to other types of businesses. And I think that to sum it up in a nutshell, I think everyone understands that, you know, law firms are built on people, and there's a lot of personal goodwill in a law firm. So that does limit its value.
Mm-hmm. Flowing on from what you said there, is there anything that a law firm can do, or a practitioner who's in charge of a law, if it's a smaller business, sort of to plan ahead? So they might want to continue working for another 10 years, but at the end of the 10 years, they want to maximize the value of their firm with the view that they will sell it to somebody else. Like what things can people be looking to do going forward to maximize value?
Well, you know, it's so obvious in some ways that it's so plainly obvious when I say what I think the answer to this is. And I think this is my personal answer, of course, and everything I'm saying is just from my personal experience. And basically, if you want to increase the value of your law firm, increase its revenue. Okay, is that obvious, Paula? Is that too obvious an answer?
Would it also be important, I think, to put in place very organized protocols so that, well, I would have thought having a big client database, a loyal client database, would be quite important as well, because perhaps some of these practitioners, as they get older and they're less keen to sort of, you know, generate work, whereas I think if you perhaps another lawyer going in with a fresh approach might be able to re-engage these clients and offer other services that maybe the former practitioner wasn't really interested in. So I really thought a client base would be important, a loyal client base.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have to have a client base to increase your revenue. But you have reminded me of something else that I've always found interesting about people who buy law firms and sell law firms. And I'm sure this applies to all professional services, because buyers will often be very concerned and worried about, you know, once they acquire this practice, the clients will run away. You know, will there be any clients left when I take over? That risk is probably the number one risk that everyone is concerned about when they're considering buying a professional services firm / law firm. And, you know, what I've found in real life is that, like, assuming that the person acquiring the firm has skills to do the work and manage people and has a reasonable personality, is good to deal with, assuming those things, of course. And I do my absolute best to encourage those type of people to buy firms. And assuming that's the case, now, as you were saying, a person who is buying a firm is going to be probably a lot more motivated and willing to offer better service to clients than someone who's basically got their main objective as winding down or finishing up or moving on to do other things with their life. So what I find often happens is not only do clients not run away, but clients can't believe the service they're getting and can't believe what's happening and give more work to the firm. So, and refer more clients. So, this is obviously a beautiful picture that I'm painting here, and obviously can't come true for everyone on every acquisition, but it does happen more often than you would think.
Yes. Great. I am here today with Peter Frankl, and Peter is an expert in buying and selling law firms. So if you are out there and you have a law firm and you are thinking about either selling your law firm or buying a law firm to increase your business reach, Peter is definitely somebody that you should consider talking to. The other thing that Peter offers is specialized consulting services to law firms to help them improve their productivity and just to look at the business in general. So you're also a CPA, and I'd say that would be crucial in your role because you play that.
Well, a lot of people ask me, have I been a lawyer? For some reason, a lot of people assume I've been a lawyer because I work in the legal industry. But no, I've never been a lawyer. I'm an accountant. So deep down, my genes are accounting genes, accounting DNA. So I do bring a different perspective to what lawyers do. I mean, I admire lawyers. Their work is essential. And my role is everything around a law firm other than actually the law itself.
Okay, so that's a very important role for people. When my next question is, when a partner leaves a law firm, do you ever assist in assessing how a partner can buy that person out? Or so that would be an interesting inquiry, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's actually not uncommon for me to be involved in that type of work because partnerships are fluid entities, and different partnership agreements reflect that fluidity, and some don't reflect it very well. But typically, you would think that every every lawyer in partnership with another lawyer would have the best partnership agreement or shareholders agreement if they're incorporated or whatever the case may be. So it may or may not surprise you, Paula, that lawyers sometimes have shocking partnership agreements or no partnership agreements at all, not written or written but not signed. We've seen it all. And so sometimes they need a bit of help, a bit of objective third-party assistance in this sort of separation process. Most people, they just want to get it done. They want to be fair with each other. They want it to be done quickly. And that's what I strive to help them achieve.
Yes, because I think that would also be something that occurs from time to time. A partner leaves a practice, but the practice wants to continue. Do people tend to take over the practice with the remaining partner or partners, or do they look to bring somebody in when someone leaves? Or just as a general, from your general experience?
Often there's younger staff coming up the ranks who can take over the equity of an outgoing partner.
Of course.
That's a very common scenario that I'm often asked to assist with. And again, a lot depends on how the partnership was set up basically in its original state. And I broadly categorize partnerships in two categories in relation to this issue. Mm-hmm. And that is something called an open partnership or a closed partnership. So an open partnership was, say, two partners, say, when they started the firm, They had the intention of just growing as big as possible and allowing as many partners into the partnership as they could. And a closed partnership is you've got, so let's say 2 partners, they started the firm sometime in the past, and they made the conscious decision that only those 2 would ever be the equity partners and everyone else would be an employee. Mm-hmm. And so I call those closed partnerships. So you've got open partnerships and you've got closed partnerships. Which is better, which is right, which is wrong? That's another very huge topic of conversation.
Okay. So is there anything else that you wanted to share about law firms or buying or selling law firms?
So I would say that in relation to someone who's thinking about selling their law firm, you can't do it soon enough. You know, you can leave it too late, but you can't do it too early. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the great difficulty people have is actually making the decision to go through with it. And so because there's procrastination, and it's totally understood why that is the case, it's a huge change in one's life. But if you can get over that procrastination and you know that you're going to do it at some point in the future, just do it, because you're going to get a much better result the longer the time you have to go through the process. One of the worst things that you can do when trying to sell any business, including a legal practice, is having a deadline. You know, don't have a deadline. Do it way before, so that you can just do it in an orderly way. The timing of it is mostly under your control. And if it happens sooner than you were hoping for, fantastic. It's much better for it to happen sooner than for it either to never happen or to happen too late.
Okay, so you did mention something that I think is quite important. You said the worst thing you can do is have a deadline. And I mean, that's just a basic rule of negotiating. If you need to do something or you're a little bit desperate, then it's always harder.
Absolutely. If you're classic, as a lawyer, I can tell you've picked it up exactly. You know, it's not good to negotiate when you've put yourself in a corner and it needs to be done by a certain date, or you've reached the point where you just can't stand, you know, going to work anymore. You know, every day is a torment for you. You don't want to reach that point. So you want to do it before it reaches that level. And of course, you don't want to become demotivated and then the clients start to leave and the revenue go down. No, you don't want to be in that position. But it's very hard emotionally for people to know when that time is coming or not coming, or when sometimes it creeps up on you and you don't expect it. So, you know, we're all humans here and this is the way it goes.
Yeah, I don't know where I read this, but I remember reading recently that apparently Rupert Murdoch, or someone described Rupert Murdoch's negotiating style like he just was going to live forever. So there's never an urgency or a pressure and I do think that's important, because there needs to be a fluidity of if you start down a direction and you find that that's not right for you or the business, that you can just, you know, keep going with whatever it is that you were doing before and then reassess it. And yeah, I actually do think it's it is very important to have airflow when you're looking to make any of these sorts of decisions, and just to sort of let them happen naturally, but to keep the ball moving as well, because you can't just, I do notice that sometimes, myself included, I'll start something in earnest and then just get completely distracted on client matters. And it does take a bit of effort to galvanize myself back onto a path of something that I find important. I mean, even something like, you know, looking at your succession planning or your will or your you know, important matters like that. So, yeah. So, Peter, this might be a good time to segue into our other important discussion today, which is what are you wearing? Can you tell us a little bit about your dress style? And I do have a few questions here, which I'll ask you in a second, but perhaps you can just talk to the clothing you're wearing today and whether that's indicative of the sort of clothes that you wear usually.
Well, like a lot of people, what I'm wearing, you could see that if you walked down the street of Sydney, you'd see people dressed like me, walking down the street. If you went into the Sydney CBD today, you'd either see no people or people jogging in their running shoes. So, yes, if you're looking at this video in 1,000 years, there you go, a suit before the work from home revolution and a tie. Ties have disappeared a lot in recent years, I've noticed, which I think is a good thing. I have dressed up especially for this event. And it's nice to know, just to let everyone know, I do remember how to tie a tie. So, that was good practice. So thank you for that.
Do you wear a tie ordinarily when you're not working from home or when you are working from home?
I don't wear a tie when I'm working from home, and I don't wear a shirt with a collar. So please don't tell anyone about that. But that I will actually, when there's a formal meeting, I guess little bit like we are having at the moment, I will put on a proper shirt, because I just think that if you're having a work meeting, talking about work issues with a client especially, or potential client, I still think that there's an important place for clothes to look professional, whatever that may be. You can look fashionable, but I think if you don't have a very good fashion taste or sense, like I don't, for example, but I know that I can put a shirt on and a tie, and I'm comfortable when I do that. And so I will wear that even though I'm at home in particular client meetings.
You mean Zoom meetings?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Do you find that dressing up a little bit makes you not more professional, but makes you want to work a little bit harder because you're dressed up?
Yeah, I think that is the case, definitely. Although, here we are, mid-2021, we've been through 2020. It's almost like most people nowadays, they don't even probably think about what they're wearing. They just do their work. So,
yeah.
But I think there was a time when that we're getting used to this whole work from home scenario, where people probably felt a bit novel about, wearing their tracksuit pants and all of that sort of thing.
Yes. I had a client come and see me the other day, and she said, I brushed my hair for you today. And I shared with her that recently I had started getting dressed even when I was working in my office. I have an office that I work from even during the lockdown, so I'm not working from home. But even if I'm not seeing clients, I will make a little bit of an effort and get dressed up a bit, because I find that I feel more productive. For me personally, sitting and working in my sweats or in the clothes that I would go out power walking in, I just don't feel the same level of professionalism, whether or not I'm seeing clients or even having Zoom calls. But I just want to ask you quick, sorry.
Oh, I think that's what we're used to, It's ingrained in us. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, we want to look a certain way, and you put the clothes on and you behave, you take up that role. So I think that's all natural. But I think it's a reflection of how we've been brought up in the world of professional services.
Mm-hmm. I noticed, Peter, you have a plain blue tie on. I also note that a lot of men, when ties used to be more fashionable, or at least people wore them more often, would say that a tie was their form of expression and that they got to pick. So I'm just interested to know, why had you pick that nice plain blue tie that you're wearing?
Well, I'm not sure how anyone's going to interpret this, but basically, if you were to look in my wardrobe, you'd probably see 90% blue shirts and 99% blue ties. And I have actually literally been criticised because for wearing blue shirts, So recently I have stopped buying plain blue shirts and started to buy ones with check and different colours and patterns. But obviously I'm not confident enough in that yet, because today, for our important meeting, I have pulled out the tried and trusted blue shirt, and which, as you have rightly pointed out, gives you the confidence that you need. And it is my costume for being who I am in the world of consulting and business broking, my blue shirt.
That's an interesting way of putting it. You have a costume for performing as a business and broker and consulting accountant. Now, I just wanted to ask you quickly, describe your dress style in 3 words.
Boring and blue.
That's 2 words.
No, and.
Oh, boring and blue. All right. Okay. Fair enough. Who is your fashion inspiration?
I guess my fashion inspiration is probably either the blue sky or my blue eyes when they're blue, or it could be when I started working for one of the big auditing firms in the computer audit assistance group, because that's where a lot of people's dress sense in the world of professional services and accounting come from their first jobs and what they were forced to wear at work. And I recall that, and to this day, I know lawyers where the dress rule was that even at lunchtime, if they left the building, they had to wear a coat. And to this day, I can, in the middle of summer in Sydney, and it's 35 degrees, and I can see lawyers of a certain age bracket wearing their coats. And every time I see that, I think, yeah, I know where that comes from, because from your very first job, you're forced, and you just got used to the idea, if you leave the building, you have to wear this coat. It doesn't matter if it's 40 degrees outside. That's what you wear.
I'm
not sure. Did I answer that question? I can't remember what the question was.
I think you did. Yeah, no, you definitely did. You definitely did. Now, just quickly, because I would like to get on to a few more pointers before we end the interview. You sent me in your little stuff about your bio or your professional stuff, but you also mentioned that you just purchased something recently. Were they shoes? Were they what were those? Your Adidas or no? What was it? I'm getting it wrong.
I don't know if I should try to reach for it. I think that could cause our whole production to fall apart. But
you can show. We can do show and tell.
Because I did bring it. I did put it over here.
Okay.
So there you go. Now, I don't know. Can you see that logo?
Yes.
Now, as we speak, you might have, if you're watching the Olympics, you probably have seen that logo.
Yes, that's Olympics. Right. I have seen that logo.
And it's a very well-known logo in the world of sport, and it's ASICS. And the ASICS brand of, what I know them best for is the running, but they do like football shoes and all sorts of things like that, ASIC. So, okay, all you accountants and lawyers out there, I'm not talking about ASIC, the regulator. I'm talking about ASICS, the sporting goods multinational, but they're based in Tokyo. And so I see that logo a lot when I'm watching the Tokyo Olympics, the 2020 Olympics, whenever you're watching that in whatever year it is. And so that jacket that I actually pulled out, all it is the thinnest piece of plastic. And who would have known that just a thin, flimsy little piece of plastic jacket like that could do so much for you? And I think a lot of that is because of where I live and where you live in Sydney. And it really doesn't get too cold. Maybe one month of the year, there are some very cold mornings. But so when I go out for a jog, I can wear that jacket and start off relatively warm and not get cold, because it actually keeps the warmth inside, and it has vents as well. So a tiny piece of plastic like that, it can keep you warm when you need to be warm, and it can stop you from overheating when you're actually doing something very physically active. So that's been probably the best piece of clothing I've bought in the last 12 months.
And Peter, just so everyone knows, we are not being sponsored by this brand at all, and you've given them a fantastic plug here. So maybe...
I haven't even started talking to you about my ASICS shoes, but so my running shoes. But no, we're not sponsored. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, so yeah, right. Very useful piece of clothing. I do know what you mean. You start out exercising and you're fine, and then you get hot quite quickly. And do you take that jacket off, or do you keep it on?
No,
you keep it on.
You keep it on. And this is the problem with wearing like a tracksuit top when you're jogging or running. Like you'll need it for the first 3 minutes, but then after that you just want to take it off, or you're sweating in this hot tracksuit top.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the solution, everyone. It's a flimsy little jacket like that. Yes, if it's got a brand name on it, it can get a bit pricey, but like a wind jacket, basically. It's absolutely perfect with vents in it. And if you're really cheap, just buy a wind jacket and cut holes in it to vent the hot air out. I mean, just contact me for any tips on that. I'll be more than happy to
direct message you. We'll put your details at the end of the thing, and they can contact you on serious business broking matters, and if they want some consulting on what sort of a jacket to wear running. Now, Peter, I just am mindful that I do want to get back to some other content discussion, but thank you for those for that contribution to the dress to impress component of this interview. It was very helpful, and I'm sure people will have found that tip great. So do you have any war stories off the top of your head that you can share with us without naming, obviously, without naming names, dates, or places, just some examples of things that you've seen happen that have worked or not worked for people in their business transition arrangements, or just, have you got any stories?
You as a lawyer, Paula, I'm sure you're aware, like being a lawyer is not a simple exercise. It's a challenge. You're dealing with people's lives, and you have a huge amount of responsibility acting for clients. So, there's a lot of stress in law firms, and a lot of the decision to sell a legal practice is often arises just from the everyday stress of dealing with clients. So people will reach a point where they've had enough, or they need a change, and they consider selling their practice, or merging, or a succession arrangement, or whatever the case may be. So, do I have war stories? Yes. I can probably, again, a few hours we can keep talking about this sort of thing. But specifically in relation to business broking, really think about why you are deciding why have you had enough? Why are you deciding to sell? And are you willing to take that step? Because a lot of the war stories arise, and I'm really generalizing here, a lot of the war stories arise because lawyers, they don't like that stress anymore of running a legal practice, of course, managing staff and dealing with people and everything, but especially the stress that comes from clients. They think that they know they need to do something, but then they'll come to me and they'll put such a barrier between accomplishing the sale that it almost becomes an impossible exercise. So that's like, you want to sell your house, but you price it above the market, and you go through the process, and it's a lot of stress going through the process, and it's difficult for buyers because your house is, say, priced above the market. So yes, that does happen with law firms as well. And so, ultimately, because professional services firms are worth a lot less, especially compared to technology companies and manufacturing and other types of businesses, really the prime motivating factor should be the change in the lifestyle that you're going to be able to accomplish by selling your law firm or entering into a succession arrangement or going into partnership or merging. All of these things ultimately should be driven by lifestyle decisions, not driven by money.
Got it. Now, I do have a couple of other quick questions that I'd like to ask. What is the value, or is there any value, in fact, in a brand? Is there ever, because one thing I do notice is that a lot of law firms perhaps don't spend, I see that it's happening more and more now, don't spend a lot of time thinking about their branding or their look and feel of the business. It's driven by the brain power.
I'm going to surprise you, I think, with this response, Paula.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe not. Is brand important? Brand is absolutely critical. Do clients care about your brand? Well, at one level, they don't care because they just want the job done. But on another level, they care incredibly about your brand because, we all know cases where you hire a law firm to intimidate your opposition, because you want a name that is going to be able to get you to your objective in a legal battle. So, yeah, brand's important in terms of attracting clients and the type of clients that you want to attract. But, one name or another name isn't that important. But the reputation that attracts to that name over many years and decades, that is critical. But the part that I'm going to surprise you with is that I think a brand is just as important, if not more important, for attracting talent into your firm.
Right.
And so when young people are looking for a firm to join or considering a job opportunity in your firm, the brand is incredibly important.
We have been talking today to Peter Frankl, a business broker and valuer specializing in law firms. Thank you again, Peter, and we look forward to having you on the show again at some point.
Thank you very much, Paula, for having me. It's been great.